So good evening, Bante. For today section of question and answer. So I think because another few days time, all the monks will be entering their vas. So usually in the tradition of this temple, Buddhist Maha Vihara, we will recite the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So I thought of like having a few session of question and answer with Bante, starting with Dhammacakkappavattana first. After that, the Four Noble Truth and the Eight Noble Path, and then Paticcasamuppada. So this what I call it. Then in the table here we have this set of Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So we will go one by one, only to the what my idea is to get to know that fundamental teachings of the Buddha are based on Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Starting with the Buddha say about life is suffering, death is suffering, always is suffering, starting from that. Then from there we go on to the much deeper. So we just concentrate on the Pali verses. The English one we will come the other side. The English will be up to Bante to explain to us about the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So Venerable can guide us.
Okay, so the important thing is that one important thing that we can note from this Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, first, what does it really mean? What are we really talking about? You see, what do we mean by Dhammacakka? And what is Dhammacakkappavattana? It's very important to understand. We are using some very important words here. One is the word Dhamma. And what do we mean by that word Dhamma? Now, when we read most books, that word Dhamma, they define as Dhamma is what supports or carries what that really means is Dhamma is the basis, the foundation. That means what is the foundation of everything? So when we say Dhamma, now this is why some modern philosophers who are called the existential philosophers, they are also supposed to be talking about the most fundamental thing. And they say that out of all the animals living in this world, including the human being being the highest evolved animal, it is the human being that is aware of his own existence. So that becoming aware of the existence, they say, is the most fundamental thing. Existence. That is why they call themselves existential. Or they speak of existence as the most fundamental thing. And along with this existence, they are also aware that they are going to die. And that creates a problem because everyone is going to die. And death is seen as the opposite of existence. So these are two things, existence and death. Now, and that is, they are saying, creating the problem. Everyone likes to exist. And some people think that this existence was created by a supernatural God. There was a God who created the world, and so we are existing because of this God. And then they say that we are dying. So God creates the existence and then He has also created death. So that has become a problem. So these religions that talk about existence and also death, they find it very difficult to answer that question because if God is a good person, why did He create existence and also death? So they had to build a story. And the story is to put the blame on someone else. The blame is put on the first two people who were created, Adam and Eve. They disobeyed God, and that is why God created death. So the reason for death is not God, it was Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve, God punished, and that is why. But what is that big offense of Adam and Eve? Because God created two trees. When Adam and Eve were created, it was that God had a beautiful garden where two trees were created. One is the tree of eternal life, and the other was the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge and the tree of eternal life. So he asked Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge. So they say there was another one that has been created by God. That was the devil. So the devil came in the form of a snake and tempted Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge. So somehow the Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, and God became so angry that he punished not only Adam and Eve, all the children of Adam and Eve who came thereafter and all the generations, and they all have to die because they eat from the tree of knowledge. And if we begin to think about that, we find that knowledge itself is what is wrong. So, knowledge itself that went against eternal life. So it's a very complicated story. But the problem is that all religions are ultimately unable to solve that problem. So this is why those who go by the Bible story, they think that Jesus came as the Son of God and sacrificed his life on the cross, and God began to think about this and ultimately realized that he has been a little unkind, and so he will forgive the sins of all these people, and then everyone who dies will be taken to heaven, where there will be eternal life and eternal happiness. So that was the solution. Of course, in that case, we don't have to worry because we can go to heaven. But there is a problem there. And that is what is called the catch-22. The catch-22 is that we are not really going to heaven till we believe in the story of Christ, who made this sacrifice on the cross, and that Christ was the Son of God. If we don't believe that, we won't be able to go to heaven and have eternal life. This is why the Pope pointed out that the Buddhists are beyond the threshold of hope. You know what a threshold is? Threshold is that just the door. When you open the door and go out, you are going through the threshold. That is just the entrance to the place, is the threshold. So, we are beyond the threshold means we cannot enter heaven. That is what it means. So, but a very interesting thing has happened. When the Buddha became a Buddha, what is the meaning of Buddha? Buddha means one who has awakened. Buddha is to awaken. And to awaken is you have been sleeping and you awake, become awake. So, what the Buddha points out is that people are normally sleeping. They are not awakened. And so the Buddha is the one who has awakened. And he has awakened from the dream of existence. So what the Buddha is pointing out is existence itself is the mistaken way of thinking. So the existential philosophers who pointed out that the most basic thing is existence, here the Buddha is saying existence is not the basic thing. There is something more basic than existence. But normally people always think that existence is basic. Now, you all think that you were at home and you came here. So you were at home means you were existing at home. And then you came here and you have seen, after coming here, you saw this room which is called the wisdom room. So you have seen the wisdom room. And that means before you came here, the wisdom room was also existing. So you were existing before you came here, and the wisdom room was existing, and you came here and saw the wisdom room. Now that is what is called existential thinking. That means just as the existential philosophers believe that you are existing, so you are also just following what the existential philosophers are saying, that existence is the basic thing. So you are existing, and the wisdom room has been existing, and you come here and you see the wisdom room. So first the wisdom room has to exist, then you have to exist, and you meet, and then you see. That meeting is what people call passa. That word passa is translated by the British people as contact. So the contact is that you are existing and you and the room got together, that was the contact. The room was existing, you were existing, and you got contact, and then you saw the room. But that seeing is an experience. The seeing of the room is an experience. So, in other words, existence came before experience. Did you understand? First you existed, and now the Buddha has been using a statement where the Buddha says, Chakkuncha paticca rupecha uppajjati chakku vijnana Tinna sangati passo. This is very important statement of the Buddha. Chakku means the eye. Chakku. Chakkuncha paticca rupecha. Rupecha. Rupa means the object that you see. That is how they translate it. Chakku is the eye. Now when I look at this glass, my eye exists, then the glass exists, and then I see the glass. And that is called passa. That is contact. You understand? But that is, the Buddha points out, that is wrong. That's not happened. What happened? The first thing that happened was the seeing. The seeing happened first, and it is in the seeing that you created the subject and an object. This is what he meant by saying, ditte dittamattam bhavisati. You know, there was a person during the time of the Buddha who called Bahir Daruchirya. That Bahir Daruchirya was a person who has been meditating during the time of the Buddha. Independent of the Buddha, he had never seen the Buddha or met the Buddha, but he has been a yogi who has been meditating. And not only meditating, he thought he has become an arhat, that he is enlightened. But his mother was also a spiritual person, and the mother died. And she was reborn as a deva, some heavenly being. And she looked from heaven, she looked at the sun and saw the sun thinks he is enlightened, but he is not enlightened. And he is also going to die in a few hours. So she went to the sun and said, "You think you are enlightened, you are not enlightened. And you are going to die very soon. You should run to the Buddha. Buddha is living at such and such a place. Go and meet him and learn from him how to become enlightened." So he got frightened and he went to see the Buddha. And when he went to see the Buddha, it was the time for the Buddha to go on the Pindapata. He is going to collecting food in the Pindapata. And the Buddha said, "Now I am going on Pindapata. This is not the time to talk to you. After I finish the Pindapata, I will tell you." This man said, "No, I might die at any moment. Before I die, please tell me." So the Buddha looked into his future and he saw that he was going to die. That is true. So he said, "Okay, I will tell you in short." And he said these things. Ditte dittamatam bhavisati. In the seeing, that means SEEing, in the seeing, there is only the seeing. That means that there is only seeing. There is no thing that is seen. There is no object that is seen. And there is no person that sees. There is only the seeing. So when he listened to this, that itself helped him to become awakened from the dream of existence. But the Buddha said, this man said, "I now want to be ordained by you." The Buddha said, "I cannot ordain you till you have brought the bowl and the robes." And so he went in search of the bowl and the robe. On his way, he met a buffalo, and the buffalo attacked him and he was killed. So this is the story. So these other disciples of the Buddha saw this and asked the Buddha, where was he born? He said, well, he's not born anywhere because he has become an arahant. You see, this is very important to understand, that to become an arahant, we have to understand that existence is not a fact. You have to awaken from that dream of existence. And it is to show how to do that the Buddha spoke the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. This Dhammacakka, Dhamma is that basis which is experience. Experience was the basis. And this, there has to be a revolution. Chakka means a wheel. A wheel is something that revolves, turns. Revolution of the wheel of experience. So the revolution has to take place by awakening from the dream of existence. That means normally the normal person is always thinking in that existential way. To awaken from that, you have to go through what is called a paradigm shift. That paradigm shift is the revolution of the wheel of experience. That complete turn over from existence to experience. Normal way of thinking is the existential thinking, and it has to be completely revolved to produce the experiential thinking. The experiential thinking is the transformation of that way of thinking. That is how you awaken from the dream of existence. And so this sutra is about that, how to do that. So this sutra is about how that revolution takes place. Now here we begin by saying Dve me bhikkave anta pabbachitena na sevitabba. There are two ends. That means two roads. That means the normal human being, I have told you earlier, we have two minds. One is the thinking mind and the other is the emotional mind. This is the problem. We have two minds, the thinking mind and the emotional mind. The thinking mind is pulling in one direction and the emotional mind is pulling in another direction. You see, to explain this, the Buddha used an analogy. Analogy. There was a man who was blind. He had the eyes, but he couldn't see through the eyes. That means he was blind. So you have seen blind people, no? Now every Monday we find blind people coming here. So we have two blind people. But there was another man, he had eyes to see. He was not blind. But his legs were crippled. He couldn't walk because his legs were not working properly. Crippled legs. So these two people got together and the blind man said, "My friend, I am blind, but I have legs. I can walk. You don't have, you have legs, but you can't use that leg. You are crippled, but you have eyes to see. Why don't we get together? I will carry you on my shoulder. So you can show me the way, turn right, turn left, you can tell me. Then I can walk. You can't walk, so I can do the walking for you." So they got together. They said okay, and they went. So when they wanted to go somewhere, the crippled man will show the way. He is the way to go. So they went like that for a while, and then the blind man began to think, every day I have to do what this man tells me, because he's on my shoulder and telling me turn right and turn left. I can't be listening to this man all the time. I must go my way. And then he started going in a different way. And what happened? Because he didn't listen to what that man was saying, and they fell. And ultimately they fell into a pit, a big well-like place, and ultimately they couldn't even come out. You see, in a similar way, what is happening is, our two minds, the thinking mind says, you see, I have a problem like that. I am also now having a similar problem. Because my doctor says I have diabetes, and therefore I should not eat sugar. So my thinking mind says, you should not eat sugar. So I said, okay. So I am obedient to the doctor and I don't take sugar. And then what happens? But every day I can't be without sugar. So, so the emotional mind says, no, it's okay today. You know, today I went to this mega mall with someone, I don't want to mention the name. Huh? And then there was a lady who took me there to get my the ears examined for my. And she bought something like a biscuit or some sort of thing like that, and gave me to eat, to find that that was filled with sugar. So what can I do? I can't eat that. So the problem is that I like to eat sugar, but you see, my mind is going in two different directions. The thinking mind says, don't eat sugar, and the emotional mind says, eat. So in the same way, so many people come to the temple, they take the 5 precepts. And when the 5 precepts, when they take, they know that it is bad to speak harsh words or even go to fight and quarrel or to steal or to commit adultery or to lie. All those things are not good. Not good to take any alcoholic drinks or something. But then they go home, maybe the husband quarrels with the wife, or the wife quarrels with the husband, or maybe you quarrel with the neighbors. Why all this? Because you see, the thinking mind is pulling in one direction and the emotional mind is pulling in the other direction. This is the problem that all human beings are having. This is the problem. The mind is going in two different directions. So, what happens is, the mind of the human being is able to think and understand what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong. And when the anger comes up, the human being has this ability to stop and think whether I should act in the angry way or whether I should act in a calm way and try to control my behavior. This is something special for the human being. But the animals find it difficult to do that. This is why if we have a dog here and some stranger comes, the dog will begin to bark. But the human being doesn't do that. But the problem is, this is why here the Buddha points out that the human being tries to stop doing the wrong thing. And that is done in two ways. Either you can If you are angry, you can begin to express the anger. Express. That means you begin to use bad words and maybe you try to fight and quarrel. That is one way of behavior. The other way is to control that anger. You don't act in that bad way. But are you happy? If you do that, you are unhappy. So, are you going to express your anger and be happy? Or are you going to suppress your anger and be unhappy? Which is a better thing to do. So we have a problem like that. And this is these two problems that the Buddha is talking about. Dve me bhikkhave anta. There are these two ways of behavior. Kamesu kamsukalikanu yogo. Hino gammo potujjaniko anaryo anatta sammito. And the other is atta kilamatan yogo. Dukkho anaryo anatto anatta sammito. Now, the important thing is that this is the problem. Are you going to express or are you going to suppress? If you express, you are creating problems for yourself as well as others. If you are going to do a job somewhere and your boss says something or does something and you are angry, what are you going to do? Are you going to fight with the boss? If you go to fight with the boss, you will be thrown out. So that means you have to be calm. So what you do is you remain calm, but when you go home, your anger is still going on. So you fight with your wife or your husband or maybe your neighbors. So this is the problem. So this is why the Buddha pointed out that there is a medial way, a middle path. And what is that middle path? That is to understand that what has happened is that your emotions have got excited. You have become emotionally excited. That is why the anger. Instead of expressing or suppressing, there is the third way of behavior, and that is to learn to relax the body and calm the mind. That is the medial way. To relax the body and calm the mind. But before we can relax the body and calm the mind, we have to understand what has really happened. If we don't understand what has happened, we won't be able to do that. We have to understand that it is the emotion that has been aroused. And the emotion was aroused because of the way you interpreted what happened in the external world. You have seen something and you interpreted that in a certain way, and that is how you became angry. Or you have heard something and you have interpreted it in a certain way, and that is how you became angry. So it is the interpretation, the thinking that started the emotion. So one thing is to understand that this is a tension in the body. Every emotion is a tension in the body, and the tension can be relaxed. Take a deep breath and relax. And the other thing is to change your thought in the mind. That means you have to change, even if you say someone did something which you consider to be bad and you are angry about that, you can forget about it and change your mind and think about a friend of yours who did something good to you. Or you can think of the Buddha. Or you can think of the Dhamma. Or you can think of the Sangha. By thinking a good thought, the mind, the emotional excitement can calm down. That is what we call meditation. So if we learn to meditate, which means to think, this is why we begin the meditation as selective thinking. That means we select the thoughts we think. We don't think any thought that comes into the mind. We learn to avoid the emotional thoughts. Thoughts that arouse emotions. And we learn to calm the mind by using calming thoughts. That we have to practice those calming thoughts. If we are constantly getting aroused with anger, we can begin to cultivate the thought that is called metta, universal goodwill. May all beings be well, comfortable, peaceful and happy. So by learning to think good thoughts, whenever the mind gets agitated, we can turn to a good thought and the mind calms down. So this is the kind of thing that here the Buddha is talking about. And that is the Majjhima Patipada, which begins with Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. What is called the Noble Eightfold Path, it begins with the right understanding or harmonious perspective. I call it the harmonious perspective because Samma Ditti, Samma, the word Samma really means harmony. Harmony means the opposite of conflict. It is a view that does not produce conflict. It produces harmony. So that means that emotional excitement does not occur. And once we have understood that properly, why our emotions are excited and how the emotions can be brought to an end. That is what the Four Noble Truths begin to tell us. Dukkha. Dukkha is the emotional excitement. It is not just suffering as something outside. The suffering is something inside, not something outside. The suffering inside is the emotional disturbance. So it is simply, although we think of a world outside, everything is going on inside. So the dukkha is not something that is outside in the world. It is something inside us. This is understood recently by a person, a scientist. This is how he wrote a book called Stress. That is how in the modern world people are now beginning to talk about a thing called stress. And what he really pointed out was stress is not something that is happening outside in the world. It is how our emotions get agitated. That is the stress. And when the emotions are agitated, the whole body becomes agitated. And when the body becomes agitated, we become unhappy as a result. And that unhappiness is the dukkha. So the dukkha is not something that is coming from outside. It is something that is going on inside. So to understand dukkha, we have to look not outside but inside. And looking inside is not mindfulness, it is introspection. It is by looking inside that we can understand what is going on inside us. How the unhappiness comes about, and the cause of this unhappiness is the emotional excitement. So this is what is called tanha, today translated as craving. Tanha is not just craving, tanha is emotional agitation. This is very important to understand that. Emotional agitation. So do you have... I have been talking a lot, so you should begin to...
I'm engrossed in
Huh?
listening.
What's that?
Engrossed in listening.
Ah.
So you have any question?
Huh?
This is what do you call it?
So you can ask questions now.
Actually, it's the eyes. What word? Eyes
Huh?
opener. Eye opener for me.
Eye
Because-
opener.
Yes, because Reverend use different scope of explaining about the Dhammacakkappavattana. So most of the time I listen to all the other venerable monks who explain about Dhammacakkappavattana. They use a different theory. So venerable give quite scientific scientific way. So it's quite logic.
Yeah, the important thing is to think about these things. And it is only when we begin to think. Now, the Noble Eightfold Path itself.
I have some question. Venerable said about the two thinking mind. One is emotional mind, the other one is thinking mind. These two, is it come together, or is it one by one, or how? Or is it come, how to call it?
Yeah, the important thing is, first thing to understand is that we have only a body. We don't have a thing called mind. The first thing to understand. This is a body, and this body is what biologists call an organism. The body is in the environment. What is outside the body, you don't have a picture to show, huh? Billy, this is where we need Billy. Yeah.
I was told not to show them.
Well, maybe sometime later, huh?
Maybe tomorrow?
Yeah. So the important thing is that we are in an environment. Now this home room becomes an environment. And we are bodies, that is all. The body is there in the environment. And this body is different from this glass or any of these bodies. These are also bodies. But this is an organism, means it has senses, 5 senses: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the body. And things happening in the environment begins to stimulate the senses. Light falling on the eye stimulates the eye. Ears, sounds coming to the ear stimulate the ear. Smells coming to the nose stimulate the nose. Taste coming to the tongue stimulate the tongue. And touch coming to the body stimulates the body. So you see that stimulation leads to a reaction. The sense reacts to the stimulus, and that reaction is what is called perception. Seeing is a perception. Hearing is a perception. Smelling is a perception. Tasting is a perception. Touching is a perception. So that perception is what the Buddha called vijnana. Chakku vijnana is eye perception. Sota vijnana is ear perception. Gana vijnana, nose perception. Jivha vijnana, tongue perception. Kaya vijnana, body perception. So these are different kinds of vijnana. But these vijnanas today, the Westerners misunderstood and they translated as consciousness. This is a big mistake they have made. It is not consciousness, it is perception. Now, during the time of the Buddha, some Brahmins came to the Buddha and said, we have these 5 senses and each sense is giving a different thing, like the eye produces a picture, the ear produces a sound, the nose produces a smell. So these are all different. Where do they meet? That was the question. So the Buddha said, Mano. Mano is where they meet. But today, because these scientists have been doing a lot of research on the body as well as the brain and all that. So we can understand what is happening, because from every sense organ, like the eye, there is a nerve that goes to the brain. From the ear, there is a nerve that goes to the brain. From the nose, a nerve that goes to the brain. From the tongue, a nerve going to the brain. All these things ultimately go to the brain, and we can see that when it comes to the brain begins to think, and by thinking begins to give meaning to what was seen or heard or smelled or tasted. And giving meaning means you begin to think and understand So that understanding is different from just seeing and hearing. Now what you see here is a percept, but what you understand is a concept. So we have to distinguish between a percept and a concept. And that is what we were talking about yesterday. And concept gives meaning to what we see or hear or smell, taste, touch. And that thinking process is the activity of mano. So mano is the brain activity, and there is a special part of the brain called the cerebrum, and the external part of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex, and that is where the real thinking occurs. That is what modern science has discovered. So the real mano is the activity of the brain that does the thinking, and with that thinking you become aware of a world. That awareness of the world is what makes you conscious of a world. So the real consciousness comes from mano vijnana. When we say mano vijnana, it is something different from chakku vijnana and sota vijnana. That is very important to understand. But there is another thing that happens. When you see something and you become aware of what you see, you begin to react emotionally to what you see. You might desire what you see, or you might hate what you see, or you might fear what you see, or you might worry about what you see. This emotional excitement is called chitta vega, chitta avega. That means the chitta can be in a calm state or an agitated state. That agitated state is the avega, and the calm state is the chitta, which is not agitated. So there is the chitta is normally in the calm state, like this water in this glass is in a calm state. But if we begin to shake it, it begins to be agitated. In the same way, the chitta is normally in the calm state, but it can get agitated. And the agitation comes according to the way you think and interpret what you saw. So it is the mano that begins the agitation. You understand? This is why the Buddha said, mano pubbangama dhamma. That the mano precedes, comes before the experience. The experience is the Dhamma. So when we speak of Dhamma, we are talking about the experience, and that experience is not only a result of thinking, it is also a result of the emotional state. So the chitta is different from mano. So the mano is the thinking part, which we call the thinking brain, and the thinking mind, and the other is the emotional. But actually, these are not two minds. They are two activities of the body. One is the thinking activity, which is an activity of the body, not the activity of the mind. And the emotional activity is also an activity of the body, not an activity of the mind. And then this emotional excitement, if expressed in action, that expression in action becomes what is called karma. When we speak of karma or kamma, karma is the Sanskrit word, kamma is the Pali word. But it's the same thing. So that the action comes from the expression of the emotion. And the expression is in two ways. One is in speech and the other in action. But the action doesn't end there, because if you begin to fight with other people, what will happen? Other people will begin to fight back. And that is what is called vipaka. So the karma is followed by vipaka. And the vipaka is not only something that happens immediately. Vipaka can happen even in the future. That means if you fight with someone, and if that someone doesn't hit back, maybe tomorrow or maybe next week, that man will bring some other people also and hit you back. Or maybe shoot you sometimes, we don't know however. So the vipaka is not just something that happens immediately. It can happen in the future. It can even happen in the future life, if you are reborn again. So you see, the vipaka can be like that. So the karma can have future results. So that is how it goes. Oh, now do you think too late, huh?
I'd like to thank Bhante for today's session. So how about Bhante, tomorrow you're free to have a second section?
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Tomorrow is Wednesday, huh?
Yeah, Wednesday.
I don't know whether the others are ready for that.
Maybe.
Huh? They'll be, huh? Well,
it's optional.
We can have.
So tomorrow we will start with what I call it, harmonious perspective.
Harmonious.
perfective with the samadhi.
Okay.
We start with samadhi, then after that we carry on with the other 8.
So
Because,
that means we'll have to go through
8 sections.
8 lessons.
Yes, 8 lessons.
Oh my goodness.
So it will be about, maybe about 1 hour, about half an hour, 1 hour. Then will be done, this question and answer. This is what I
Okay.
planned for this time now.
Well, people can come, no problem.
Because this one I remember. I think last year Bante mentioned I wanted to have a video shoot about this. So I'm doing
So
this.
we'll have to make use of Billy.
Yeah, no.
Huh?
Can have if a section maybe needed Brother Billy to show the diagram, then he can do it.
You'll have to ask whether Billy is.
Tomorrow is okay, but after that I'm going out station.
There you are.
On Thursday.
Next week will be again.
Next week okay.
Next week Tuesday and Wednesday will be okay.
Tuesday, Wednesday okay.
Then we'll make it next week Wednesday. We can speak in part. My part can go on tomorrow, and Billy's thing can come
on
later.
Tuesday or Wednesday next week.
Yeah, that is also good.
You have
Then
different
then
inputs.
I don't have to worry. We can get Billy to show the pictures next week.
I can show tomorrow if you want. I'm free tomorrow, but not Thursday.
So tomorrow,
I think tomorrow we start with
what we spoke about today can be shown tomorrow.
It's okay.
How is that?
Can
What would you like to show tomorrow, Bante?
No, mainly the diagram and description of the organism in the environment, and then show how the information goes from the senses to the brain, and the brain begins to think, and from there comes the emotional arousal, and how the emotional arousal leads to the action part and the vipaka. What we have got in that book.
Yes.
And not only this, in a bigger way we have to show what we got in that other book, the new book that is coming. We put some new diagrams.
Yeah, the new diagrams.
Yeah. The new diagrams.
Yeah. They're not in the...
Yeah, they are not here. They are,
Okay.
Yeah.
that will be great.
Yeah. So we meet again tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Ah.